Is there a stigma when people come to you? And I see you smiling, so this looks like something that must be a big problem.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, the stigma is so big that we have both in Nassau and Suffolk County. We have in Nassau County here, we have the Mental Health Association of Nassau County. In Suffolk County, we have the Association for Mental Health and Wellness, which, by the way, I actually happen to sit on the board as a board member. Those two organizations, their main focus, besides providing resources, is to do stigma-busting types of activities. The stigma with mental health is nobody likes to talk about it. It's the quiet little secret. It's the pink elephant in the room, and people are suffering every day, but nobody wants to really face the issue. So what happens is when someone's having a rough time, they think that if they say that they need to go to therapy, or if they go to therapy, that makes them appear to be weak. And they suffer in silence. What we at the Association for Mental Health and Wellness do, what National Association of Social Workers, New York State chapter nationally do, we try to make it clear. If you're having a problem, if you're not feeling psychologically well, it's okay to go out and seek counseling or therapy. And if you have to take medication, which sometimes it's a need to, then that's okay too. But more importantly, to talk about it does not make you weak. And the stigma is, if I say I'm going to therapy, or I need counseling, or I don't feel good psychologically or emotionally, then somebody will look at me as there's something wrong with me. And we got to get rid of that. And that's a big issue that we're addressing now, stigma busting about mental health illness.
I love that term, stigma busting. Silas, we're going to take a brief break from my hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, WHPC 90.3. Our guest today is Silas W. Kelly, member of the Board of Directors of the NASW New York State Chapter, representing Nassau and Suffolk County. We'll be right back after this brief intermission.
Attention men under the age of 35. You know what really impresses the ladies? When a guy has a few drinks and later gets pulled over for buzzed driving. That could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. There goes let's grab dinner and a movie. Oh, I know. You drive more carefully when you're buzzed. You've proven that hundreds of times. A woman admires that kind of confidence. And you've practiced how to speak if a cop does pull you over. Slowly, clearly, and politely, like, "Good evening, officer." A woman admires that kind of foresight. And what woman doesn't find it adorable that you call it buzzed even though the law calls it drunk? You could kiss $10,000 goodbye, along with any chance of having a girlfriend. Because nothing says I'm a catch more than a guy who lives in his parents' basement and calls it my place.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
My Hometown is made possible by Anton Media Group. For more of your local community news, you may visit AntonMediaGroup.com. If you have a story to share or want information about subscriptions, you may call 516-747-8282.
WHPC. And now we return to My Hometown.
We're back on My Hometown. I'm your host, Bill Horan, along with Nassau Community College student John Gallo. Our guest today is Silas W. Kelly, licensed master social worker and a member of the Board of Directors of the NASW New York State Chapter. John, I think you had a question for Silas.
Yes. Silas, as you were mentioning before, mental health issues can occur at any stage in one's life. But is there talk about and discussion about correlation between mental health and childhood trauma?
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of research and studies have been done, and a lot of research has been documented that things that an individual experiences early in childhood can have very negative effects on them in their adult years. They've come to make that, they've named that term ACE, or it stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And basically what the studies have shown is that when a child is exposed to traumatic situations, abandonment, neglect, abuse, early in the formative years, that it becomes internalized, and it actually almost becomes something that manifests itself in adult years. They've shown that it causes individuals to develop certain types of medical conditions later on in life. But more importantly, it defines how they grow into adulthood and how they learn how to handle and adapt to things. So someone that's abandoned as a child in the formative years, and that's between birth and, say, the age of 4. If during that time that there's not a lot of nurturing and love, and the child is not picked up and held a lot, if they are not changed, their diapers are not changed when they need, and if they don't get the bottle that they need when they're hungry, is the research has shown they grow up to distrust because their needs weren't met. And because their needs weren't met at that point, as they grow into adulthood, they find it hard to develop close relationships because they tend to think that people are not going to be there for them. Well, where did that thought come from? Well, the research shows that because they were neglected as a child, they internalized that, and that affected the way that they have relationships when they get into their adult years.
Silas, Long Island, Queens County, and the local area is such a great place. There's so much to do, and yet we have so much substance abuse. We read about it, we hear about it. I could see more if kids were bored, someplace out in the sticks, so to speak, nothing to do, try this. But how do you handle that here, and what's happening in that area?
Wow, that is,
that's a 3-hour show right there.
Yeah, we could do that. We can do a whole series on that. But interesting question, and yes, we know that there's a serious drug crisis, opioid to be exact, all over the country. But it is really, really raging out of control here on Long Island, both in Nassau and Suffolk County. And the issue right now is that people are hurting emotionally. Now, we talked earlier about mental health and the stigma and people not knowing how to talk about the issues. Well, underneath the underlying issues for most people, substance use had to do with some type of trauma, some type of abuse. They never talked about it. They never dealt with it. And so they start to, what we call in the substance use disorder field, they start to self-medicate. Another term that we use is they start to self-anesthetize. They take substances, whether alcohol, opioids, marijuana, benzodiazepines, which are your anti-anxiety medications. They abuse them because they're trying to numb the pain. They're trying to escape the reality of something that may have happened to them during childhood, or they lost a loved one, or they had a traumatic experience. So the ACEs that are referred to are the adverse childhood experiences that caused an individual to develop maladaptive ways of handling things. So the substance use disorder issues that we're dealing with right now have a lot to do with the fact that people are searching for something, they're hurting, and they don't know how to get out of that emotional pain. So they try to numb it, they try to drown it, and they try to use pills, heroin, needles to try to escape it and get away. And then that is where the problem starts. But we don't realize it until they become addicted, and then all of a sudden we have a whole different issue. So it really goes back to what a person is feeling inside. And if they can't get rid of that pain, then they try to take something to make them forget about the pain.
Silas, if a loved one or a neighbor sees this happening in their family, can you once again give us that contact information where people could get in touch with you? I didn't want to leave this till the end of the show because this topic is just much too important, and so many people probably need your help and don't know it's available, how to reach out to you, etc.
Well, yeah, there's quite a few resources that are available out there. Again, I will start with the National Association of Social Workers, NASWNYS.org. That is the website. Or you can email info@naswnys.org. The toll-free number is 800-724-6279. Or you can email me directly at silaskelly@mail.adelphi.edu. And also, the Mental Health Association MHAW.org. Okay, that is the Association for Mental Health and Wellness. Their website, you can contact somebody there as well, and they would be happy to connect you with some type of help. Also, if you could contact LICAD, the Long Island Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence, they run a 24-hour helpline. There's help out there. You can find it anywhere online, but those are the resources that I know you can directly get help and use that information. If you have someone that's struggling, there's help out there. There's hotlines, and we do need to be able to provide as much help as possible because people are dying every day, and it is an epidemic.
And so important. And if someone didn't get all that down, or they were driving, or they're just not fast enough, call the station at WHPC, and we will put you in contact with Mr. Kelly here. And you can see he knows where the resources are, and we've got the expert here. John?
As we were just mentioning, and as we're all too familiar with at this point, how deadly this issue is, we've seen spikes in fatal overdoses recently.
Yes.
We'll talk about things like fentanyl now being involved. But besides those specifics that are making it worse, what are some of the types of treatment and counseling methods that are effectively used to deal with substance abuse issues?
Well, the first thing is that we do, and it's a social work practice, and that's the biopsychosocial. So there's an assessment. So somebody calls up and says, I have a problem, I have a drug problem, I have an alcoholic problem, I need to get some counseling, I need some help. Well, the first thing is to find out everything we can about the individual. So the biopsychosocial. So we look at biologically, are they on any medication? Have they ever had any mental health counseling? Are they currently seeing a mental health professional? Psychologically, what is the types of stresses are they dealing with? And socially, what's their family life like? So the first thing we do is we do an assessment. Then the next thing we do is figure out what's the best treatment modality that would be effective for them. Sometimes it's group therapy. Sometimes it's one-on-one. Group therapy has been shown to be very effective. Also, there's something called medication-assisted treatment, where they'll see a psychiatric doctor who's licensed to prescribe medication, and then they'll also be in treatment. They'll go to one-to-one counseling or therapy, or they'll go to group therapy. Other treatment modalities, motivational interviewing, and that deals with the stages of change, where the questions that are asked try to determine what stage is an individual at, because some people may not be ready to totally walk away from substances. The other thing is that there's a thing called CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and that's based on cognition, the mental processing of information in any form. We start to work with the individual to have them to take a look at their thought process. What are they thinking? Okay, why did they choose to go to their friend's house when they knew that friend was going to likely offer them some substance if they say they were trying to stay away? So what was the thought process? We try to get them to look at the thoughts that they think equals the actions that they take. So cognitive behavioral therapy, getting them to change their way of thinking, because we get them to take a look at what has happened since you started using and abusing substances. Look at all the negative things that have happened. Okay, is this something that you want to continue? We get them to kind of take a look at, and then we try to point them in the direction of either group therapy, individual therapy, and sometimes a combination of both of those, and medications such as Suboxone, Vivitrol, and those medications, and sometimes, not as much, but methadone. Those are medications that have been shown to help. But it always goes back to the individual being determined that they want to be better than they were, because substance use has caused them nothing but trouble.
Yep, meeting people where they are and meeting their needs then.
Absolutely.
Silas, we want to thank you so much, and would like to make sure our audience knows our guest has been Silas W. Kelly, a licensed master social worker and member of the board of directors of the NASW New York State chapter representing Nassau and Suffolk counties. For further information, you can call 518-463-4741. This is Bill Horan, along with Nassau Community College student John Gallo for My Hometown. Thanks for listening.
We like to get your feedback on My Hometown. Send your comments to WHPC at NC.